And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to another session of Inspiring Conversations. So let us go. I will remind you why I am doing this. So it's all about creating conversations that really matter. We are diving into ways to connect deeply, break down barriers, and build moments that inspire trust and growth. Whether, whether it's with your team at work or in your everyday chats, we'll bring more positivity, realness, and impact into every conversation. And today we are, I think, breaking loads of barriers. And we are this person I'm talking to, Kenneth Kunken, and this is his book, I Dream of Things That Never Were. He got tackled in a American football when he was 20 and got paralyzed. And I have to tell you, people, just get this book, listen to it on Audible or wherever you can download it or whatnot, because it is unbelievable. And to meet the guest of honor today, here we have Kenneth J. Kunken.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, you amaze me, Ken. It's just I in context of all people I have ever met in my life, it is just the things that you have done, and it's so inspiring, and it's just it brings the concept of when you're sad and you feel like, oh, I didn't get my apple today, well, it's just like bonkers what you have to go through, and the time it was, when was it, in 1970 or something that you,
I,
yeah, so like, and back then nothing. So you were a pioneer, like in everything, and just your struggles through the hospital system and everything. But give us a little bit of, Kenneth Kunken. Should we
okay,
say before and after?
hey, all right. Well, I was very fortunate that I've always had a very loving family who has supported me every step of the way. And growing up, I was very close with my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, as well as a wonderful brother and sister. So I've been very fortunate throughout my life to be surrounded by people that I knew not only were loving, but very supportive and would be there if I ever needed help. So in 1970, when I was 20, I was playing American football in college at Cornell University. And when I was actually making a tackle on a kickoff, I broke my neck and severely damaged my spinal cord. And as a result, I'm almost totally paralyzed. I have a little bit of movement in my left arm, but nothing in my fingers or wrist. And on the right side of my body, I could just shrug my shoulder a bit. So I need help doing virtually everything. And I was very fortunate that my family was with me every step of the way. And they assured me that they would act as my arms and legs if need be to make sure I could still do everything in my life that I wanted to do. And thanks to them, I've actually done that.
And that is what is so inspiring in listening to you read the book, because you read your own book, and to think about what hospitals lacked, because in those years since 1970 and today, totally different, all the gears, hospital gears and stuff, because it was quite horrific things, like when they were turning you, and like, I felt it was so like, why didn't they try to do something like the physio people, or so it was just, it was horrible. And then listening to, what was it, they had to empty, or like if you laid for too long, then they had to.
Right, I get a lot of congestion in my
Yeah,
lungs that I couldn't cough up, so they needed to suction me, which was very, very painful. But things were very different 55 years ago.
yeah.
Um, they didn't have a lot of hope for somebody in my condition back then. In fact, they didn't think I was gonna live through the week. So they were not used to dealing with people with spinal cord injuries back then, especially an injury as high in my spine as I was injured. You need to keep in mind, this was well before Christopher Reeve's injury. Now, Christopher Reeve became a tremendous role model for so many people, and he did wonders to draw attention to what somebody with a spinal cord injury faces and what they not only go through, but what they can actually achieve in life. But this was well before that. And there weren't very many role models back then that I could look to for hope or inspiration. And unfortunately, the medical profession back then was not giving me much hope. They seemed to feel the less the patient knew, the better. So I had no idea exactly what was happening to me and what I was going through. And, when I was undergoing my rehabilitation, I was surrounded by a lot of other individuals who had spinal cord injuries, who had been injured a lot longer than I had, and they didn't seem to be doing much with their lives. And I really attribute that to the fact that nobody seemed to be encouraging them to do more. I mean, back then, you didn't see many people with spinal cord injuries back in college or in other types of schooling or education. And you certainly didn't see them in the workplace. In fact, you rarely saw them out in public because facilities, at least here in America, were not very accessible back in 1970. There were steps everywhere and no ramps or curb cuts to enable somebody in a wheelchair to get around or to go to a restaurant or to go to a movie theater. So things have changed quite a bit during the last 55 years.
But in this sense, I have to give a shout. Like your father, he was an insurance salesman, and if it hadn't been for him, like and his effort to keep you inside the insurance company, because well, in America, your system is just bonkers for us people who live in outside America. So the thing that you could at least pay people who could come and take care of you, and so talk a little bit, tell us a little bit about his role, because your parents must have, or at least him, you lost your mother when you were quite young, didn't you?
I was less than a month old when my mother
Yeah,
died from
yeah,
polio. I was
yeah,
born in 1950 during the polio epidemic. But
yeah.
my father was an insurance salesman. And I was very fortunate that he had me well covered under a major medical policy that he had. So as a result, most of my medical needs were covered through his policy. And what happened with many people that had a disability is they could not afford to pay for an attendant or could not go to work because they'd lose benefits that would help them pay for an attendant. I was very fortunate that my father had me well covered, that I could afford to eventually go to work and still have coverage to pay for an attendant to help me. So while my father was not able to take care of me physically, he was there with the financial support that enabled me to do the many things that I was able to do. But I was fortunate that I had aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, other relatives who helped me physically, and that made a huge difference as well.
But do you think your father had the insights? How do you say it? Like because sometimes you see your child have an accident, and you don't know what to do. But somewhere he must have known that in order to for you to get a life, he fought for you. he didn't just lay down and say, "Oh, Ken, I will lie with you and talk to you." Like he made a lot of things so you could have a good life.
Right. Well, he had faced a lot of adversity in his life. I mean, he fought in World War II. In fact, he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. So he knew what it was like at an early age to see people all around him get either injured or killed. And then when he got married and his wife, my mother, died when she was just 24 and left him with a 1 month old baby and a 2 year old, my brother Steve, who at the time had a mild case of polio and had to undergo a lot of physical therapy, but fortunately recovered. So, excuse me. So he faced a lot of adversity in his life as well. And I was fortunate that he, being an insurance agent, made sure that we were um, prepared for a type of um, medical condition that people may experience. But quite frankly, Hayden, nobody could anticipate, the type of injury I had and what the expenses would be. So nobody could have been prepared for an injury such as mine in terms of insurance coverage or financial challenges that come with this type of injury. So we were very fortunate, though,
Yeah.
that at least I had that coverage.
But I also like, because there were many times in your, like, the first years after you got injured, when you were talking about how the people in the hospital treated you. Like you know nothing about your own condition. You know nothing if you lay in this position or on like with the head down or up or whatever. And then when you wanted Steve to show the nurses how to fix the bed, and they were just like, "Nope, go out, 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 out." Like they were so arrogant, and there was something like my blood started boiling because why is it that you can't, like? Are we not working together? Like, so it was really exciting, like to think about everything that you went through.
It was a very different time back then. And
Yeah,
for some reason, the medical professionals seem to think that the less the patient knew, the better. That they're the doctors, they're the therapists, they're the nurses. Just listen to what they have to say, and you don't question it. And obviously, here I was 20. I was uh, at the beginning of my junior year studying engineering at one of the most prestigious engineering colleges in the country, Cornell University. And suddenly I have this physical injury. I broke my neck and did not have any injury to my head. And yet I was treated like I didn't have a brain in my head once I had that physical injury. And that was very difficult to get used to. And I was fortunate that, as I said, my family stuck with me and made sure I had not only the proper care, but that I had the proper guidance, that they helped assure, along with the vocational counselor that I had at the Rusk Institute, that I would go back to school, continue my education, and make something of myself. And I was fortunate that I had at least one really good nurse by the name of Barbara Crook who took an interest in me and made sure I was getting the proper care when I was in the hospital and helped me enormously by just assuring me that there was still a lot that I could do and making sure I was at least comfortable in my physical condition. And it made all the difference. And I think once people, doctors back then seemed to think that you cannot show any empathy. It almost seemed like
yeah,
a sign of weakness. You have to distance yourself. And I thought that was so wrong. I think it helps when you're looking at a person who, is helping take care of you physically and know they are concerned, you know, how you're feeling, what's most comfortable for you, and try and eliminate whatever anxiety you may have about what you're going through. Because it was very scary not knowing not only what you were going through, but what you were going to face. And I think that's changed a lot. At least I hope it has.
Yeah. And it was also like when you we come to think of it, when you went to school, like you had the desire, you wanted to do it. Yeah, like you had a vision, you wanted to finish what you started. But as you mentioned in the beginning, back at that time, people were not used to seeing disabled people. And then listening to your book, you were talking about the chairs you had. Like it sounded like you were, in it was just like big and you difficult to drive, and you like, and I was just like, oh my God, talk about like, oh, I'm coming. Please move. Like it's not like the attention that you like. How was it, or did you feel ever? Was it only the eye look, like people looking at you? Like how was it for you? Because it must have been weird. Like you just
It was incredibly difficult. I always thought before my injury that I was a bit of an introvert. I never liked to be the focus of attention. When I'd go to these big lectures in class, I would do my best to sit in the very back and
yeah.
not notice and not raise my hand. And suddenly here I am, away from the hospital, away from people who are used to seeing somebody with a disability. And I'm at a campus that was not accessible at all. It was on a very hilly terrain with a lot of steps in front of each building. And I was constantly being stared at because students were not used to seeing somebody in my condition. And, if they ever saw somebody who was in a wheelchair, it was usually an elder adult who, may have had a stroke or some other condition. Or if it was a younger person, they may have had difficulty using their legs, but everybody could certainly use their arms. And here, I couldn't use my arms. So, if I went to the cafeteria, I had to be fed. People were not used to seeing, a teenager, person in his 20s being fed by somebody. So everywhere I went, I was being stared at. And I was very uncomfortable having that type of attention.
Talking about that, like that is one thing, but then being in a school, how did they ever at Cornell tell you, why don't you just quit? You are just a liability to us. Like we have to change everything, and you are just like blah blah. And like, how determined were you? Like, did you flip? No, I was going to say, did you flip the finger? Like, my brain. Like, yes, I told you that I would say something more wrong.
You know, um, they never told me to quit.
Well, yeah,
They never tried to discourage me. But, I think one of the things that worked in my favor was that I had received a lot of publicity. And I'd gotten a lot of publicity for different reasons.
yeah.
One, of course, was, being a young man playing college football and suddenly having this traumatic injury was news. When I was in the hospital, um, I was asked to testify before a United States Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy, a very, very famous individual. Um, and I got a lot of publicity for testifying in front of that committee. And in fact, it was shortly after my testimony that Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail with an inscription on it that he said his late brother Robert Kennedy liked very much. And the inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and say why not." And that quotation really had an impact on me. In fact, that's why I named the title of my book, I Dream of Things That Never Were. But, I took it literally and I felt I was really dreaming of things that never were because I didn't see people doing some of the things that I was either doing or wanted to do. And I was determined to try and fulfill my dreams. And I think the publicity helped me get some of the proper support and attention for other individuals when they saw what I was going through and tried to help when they could. And I had a lot of students and fraternity brothers and football teammates trying to help me when I was away at school, as well as my personal care attendants, as well as my family whenever they could. So I was more fortunate than most in terms of going through my injury and disability.
But isn't it, Ken? Because you shrug off that you were not a pioneer because all the attention that you got, good or bad, you got Kennedy, you got to talk to Senator Kennedy, and you like there are so many. We must say the positive things that they maybe changed people's perception and as you say, the people around you they fought for you. They stood behind you and said, "Why not?" Like so, so in a sense, like okay, you are not the most famous person wherever on this planet, but of course it helps to be Christopher Reeve, who has passed away. But you are in a sense like you were noticed, you were talked to, you were asked, and you could express your opinion. That must be huge.
It really was. And the fact that I could still talk and use my voice to make a
Yeah.
difference and an impression, I think changed a lot of people's attitudes towards, being with and having contact with somebody with a disability. And I think it's so important these days. In America, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for some reason, our current administration does not have a favorable opinion of that. And I think they are so wrong in having a negative opinion. I think what they fail to appreciate is being exposed to people that are different than you, whether it be through a disability, through a different religion, a different educational background. I think it helps everybody to have that exposure, to include people in everyday activities that may be different than you. To have a more diverse community is a good thing, not a negative. And to treat everybody equally is so important. It's so important, no matter what your beliefs are, whether it be in religion or in politics or in education in the workplace. It improves everybody's experiences, their attitudes, their feelings, not only for themselves, but for others. And I felt once I was eventually in a position where I could work and help others, that helped me so much. And, for people to just feel the proper empathy to appreciate what somebody may be going through and not be critical of it, but be supportive of it, helps everybody. It elevates everybody around them.
And also, if I might add, your vision or your insights, like you are stuck in a wheelchair, you can't raise your arms, you have only your eyes, and like, and luckily, like you have a good brain, but you can talk about things from your own perspective because you see life from a different position, isn't it?
Very different. And it has made all the difference. The fact that I could still communicate, say not only what my needs and desires were,
Yeah.
perhaps still be in a position where I could help others. And I was very fortunate, Hayden, just so your listeners know, I eventually became a lawyer. I became an assistant district attorney. And when I was working in the district attorney's office, I received a very special award from the court officers. And they named me one year the outstanding assistant district attorney. And I believe they did that not because they recognized the impact I was having in my particular office, but on the impact I was having on them, the court officers, and other court personnel, and other people who came in contact with the criminal justice system. And I think that says a lot about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not just about any one individual, but it's about how you may have an impact on all the other people you come in contact with. And I think the more people realize that, they see that it's a good thing to be more inclusive, right? And it's made a real difference, not only in my life, but I've been told in the people I've come in contact with. In fact, a couple of years ago, the district attorney actually named an award after me. It's called the Kenneth Kunken Award, and the district attorney's office gives that out annually. It's the only award the district attorney gives out annually. And I believe they did that to recognize the impact that I had on the office and the other individuals I was working with. And I was told, when you leave our office, you go through what's called an exit interview, where you talk about what you like best about the job and what you thought could be improved about the job. And I was told on a number of occasions that my fellow assistant district attorneys, when they were leaving the job, said one of the best parts of their job was meeting, working with, and getting to know me. Now, Hayden, I don't say that to boast or brag. I think what they really meant was being exposed to somebody with my type of disability made an impact on them, and it helped motivate and inspire them to do more, not only in the job, but with their lives. Because unless they had a close relative with a disability, they rarely came in contact on a daily basis with someone in my condition. And they seemed to feel it made a big impact on them. And they said that was one of the best parts of their job. And that made me feel so good to hear that I was having an impact on others. And I think there's a lot people can learn and appreciate by seeing what the struggles are that other people go through, what they do to get through every day, and that they still have the same needs, wants, and desires as everybody else. And I think the challenges I faced were well worth it because now I'm in a position where I'm having a great life and I'm very happy at the position I'm in.
And that, I think, like you come into something, you are talking about something that is really important that we meet, we have to meet all kinds of people. We have to work with all kinds of people. We are not. Oh, think if it were like 500,000 people like me, ugh, like, that would be horrible. Like, ugh. So, so it is always, but it must be also the oh, yeah, Kenneth, he is like this, like he's like his brain is functional, but because it's so often people are so afraid, isn't it? Like they don't know what to say, and they like, oh, I don't know, like what if I say this because you are in a wheelchair or like blah blah blah. So it helps them, but because we have to talk about, it's already a half an hour gone, so like time flies when you're having fun. But a good friend of mine from the UK, Rab Bessie, he says, how did you manage to keep your spirit high when institutional thought at that time? No, yes, I will start again. How did you manage to keep your spirit high when institutional thought at that time was to keep you isolated and information less? Well, I have the answer for it. Rab, you just have to listen to the book. You have to buy the book because it's brilliant. Isn't it, Ken?
Thank you. I appreciate that. But once again, if I just may repeat, my family and friends kept my spirits up.
Yeah.
They kept my hopes up. They kept my feelings for what I may be facing in the future positive. And it was as a result of them. They kept me informed on what I needed to know, provided me with the proper information, provided me with the proper encouragement. You cannot do this alone, Hayden. You need support. It really does take a community, as Hillary Clinton used to say. And I was fortunate that I had that support.
But I think it's also sometimes back in the days, the doctors or people were told like, and you were just like, "Hello, I'm here. I can hear what you're saying. Like, why are you listening? Like, this doesn't concern you." Well, it's my life you're talking about. So it's
It's
just
funny.
weird, isn't it? Isn't it? Like you were just laying there, couldn't do anything, and they were just like, "Are you talking about me?" Yes. Don't like that's not of your none of your concern.
You know, if I may specifically comment on one thing that happened to me, when I was undergoing my therapy in the rehab facility, when one of the physical therapists was putting me through certain types of exercises and range of motion, and she would rate that on a scale of what type of muscle movement you had, how you were able to perform certain tasks. And when I asked her, what type of rating she gave on some of the things I was doing, her specific answer to me was, "That's none of your concern." And I was flabbergasted.
Yeah,
What do you mean it's not my concern? This is me you're talking about and writing about. And that seemed to be the attitude back then. Rather
yeah,
than including me in their discussions, in their evaluations, in their recommendations, their attitude was, "That's none of your concern. Just leave it up to us." And that was so wrong. And I believe it really has changed a lot since then.
yeah. Of course, because there was some change in the '80s and stuff. Because it's not like your brain didn't get mushed when you got tackled. Like that was not it. Like you still have your great mind. Like you are. It's not like it's just like weird. But just to finish off Rapper, he says, huge respect, Ken. Oh, and then he says, shrugging your shoulders will help in this session. I do it all the time with Hedin. Like he is a jokester, so but that is life. We need to have some fun. But now we have to jump on like your how many degrees do you have? You finished the engineering, didn't you?
All right. Well, I got my bachelor's degree where I was majoring in industrial engineering. But based on the recommendation of one of my psychology professors, a person by the name of Dr. James Moss, I had taken some electives in psychology. He encouraged me to go on and pursue a career in psychology where he felt I could have an impact counseling others. So I continued my education at Cornell and I received a Master of Arts there where I majored in counseling and student personnel administration. But I knew that I really needed to have more schooling and improve my credentials to work as a counselor. So I then pursued a second master's degree, this one at Columbia University, where I earned a Master of Education degree in psychological counseling and rehabilitation. And after that, it took me a year to convince somebody to hire me because everybody felt I was just too disabled to work. This was in the mid 1970s. But eventually, I was able to get a wonderful job as a vocational rehabilitation counselor at the Human Resources Center, which is now called the Viscardi Center. It's named after its founder, Dr. Henry Viscardi Jr., and they're located on Long Island in New York. Excuse me 1 minute. Could you just give me a drink, please? My wife's just given me a drink of water.
Yes.
Thank you. And while there, I became a federally certified rehabilitation counselor. But I felt there was still more that I could do. So after working there for a little over 2 years, I left there and went to Hofstra University's law school. And I got my law degree and I passed the very difficult New York State bar exam. And I was fortunate to be hired as a Nassau County Assistant District Attorney, the community that I live at. And I worked there for more than 40 years. And I was promoted a number of times, where I eventually became one of the deputy bureau chiefs, where I was helping supervise more than 25 other assistant district attorneys. And I'm fortunate that I had a number of people that they gave me the opportunity to first go to school and achieve the education that I was able to earn, and then to eventually work first at the Viscardi Center and then at the district attorney's office. And that made all the difference in my life. And, as you indicated, it was never easy. I mean, I went through long periods of being very depressed at my situation in life and the obstacles that I was facing, but I always had the support to help get me through it. And now, just so your listeners know, I'm married. I have a very incredible, wonderful wife by the name of Anna. She's sitting just off camera to my right. And we got married in 2003. Uh, and at the time, it was shortly before I turned 53. And I had been hurt for more than 30 years at that time. And when we got married, Anna said she'd like to have my baby. I couldn't believe it. And not just my baby, not just a baby, my baby. And here I was, I'd been paralyzed for more than 30 years, was in my 50s, but we decided to pursue it. And we explored different options, including in vitro fertilization. And we were surprised that it was still actually possible for someone in my condition to father a child. So we pursued in vitro fertilization, and miracle of miracles, Anna became pregnant. And Aiden, I was present in the delivery room on January 24th, 2005, when my wife Anna gave birth to triplets. We have three incredible sons, Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy. They're now 20 years old. They're at three separate colleges in upstate New York, doing incredibly well. And I couldn't be more proud or happier than to be their father and Anna's husband.
That is also a thing, like, because I remember with me, I have to, because I think you have an interesting story when you went after your law barring exam, because like I was just like, what the, like, how on earth? But at some point when I was listening to the book, and I was just like, I'm getting mad, I'm mad, and then your wife answered, well, it has a happy ending. And I was like, yeah, I know, don't disturb me. But so I'm just like, that is, but I know also because it's not maybe compatible or what. We went also through the IVF. So, and we have twins. So, but it
Right,
is just
right.
that you can. And it's just, nothing is better. Because of course you lie there as a 20-year-old and you have everything in front of you, and then all of a sudden all these questions, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
sorry,
it always bothered me when people would say, you can't do something. I didn't want
yeah,
anybody to ever tell me you can't. They may have said it's never been done before, but that's okay.
yeah,
There was no reason just because it hasn't been done before. That meant that I could not do it now. And I was fortunate that I had the support system to allow me to at least try and hopefully succeed. And unfortunately, many people don't have the support system that I always had.
yeah. But it is because I have another UK friend, David Pushkin. He lost, when I met him 5 years ago, he had just lost his eyesight, and that is also one thing, like, to lose your eyesight.
Mm.
And he has as well. He's saying having people in your corner is essential, as well as self advocacy. There is still stigma around disability. We need to change the narrative. And that maybe is a good segment to talk about when you went for the lawyer's bar exam. How, because there was something, you had everything on paper and you had to, like, you have some, was it, you were just allowed alone in the room, or how was it?
Well, they assigned a writer for me, somebody I'd never met, to
Yeah,
do the writing, but they didn't want to give me much additional time to
yeah,
do the test. And it's over a period of 2 days. It's a
yeah,
very lengthy exam, very tiring. And while they allowed me to start a little earlier than the other test takers, I had to finish at the same time. Now it takes 2 to 3 hours to get me up and ready in the morning, and the exam was starting at 9. So I had to get up by 5:30 just to get to the exam and have, a few minutes extra before we started. And then dictating my answers always took more time. If I was dictating, and let's say part of it was multiple choice, And I'd say, well, the answer to number one is B. And the writer would say, is that B or D? And I'd say, well, B is in boy. And I'd make sure I'd watch to make sure they checked the right box. So it was obviously taking a lot more time. They
Yeah.
now have given somebody with a disability extra time to take an exam. In fact, rather than having to do it in 2 days, I believe they're now giving an individual 4 days. And that makes an enormous difference when time is, of the essence and real pressure. So they've come a long way now in recognizing the needs of people with disabilities, whether it be in taking standardized tests or just getting the proper accommodations made at a school or at a job. Um, in 1992, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed that mandated that more facilities had to be made more accessible. And that's made a big, big difference for people. But
Yeah.
still, employment is still very difficult for people with disabilities. And there's a lot of work we still need to do to make sure employers recognize that people with disabilities can make some of the best, most competent, most loyal employees an employer can ever hope to find.
But how was it, Ken, when you that was just the bar exam, like when you had to go into courtroom, then you had to go for another test. And by the way, compassion was probably something you just put on a bread back then, in a peanut butter sandwich or something, because it's on. This was the part where I was like, my blood was boiling, because what the heck? Like, you had a person beside you who didn't even like, like you say, B or D, or like, it's just like unbelievable. But then you went for the, what do you call it, the court exam, or like you have.
Right, bar exam, and which is
Yeah.
very difficult. It's a very lengthy 2 day test where first they measure everything in the state that you want to be admitted to practice in. So I took the New York State bars. And then the second day it was all about federal law. And they actually added a third day that I had to take, which was an ethics exam. And, they assigned somebody to do the writing for you, and it was very challenging. But I might add, Hayden, that with me, here I went through 3 years of law school in the standard 3 year time period. I passed a very difficult bar exam the first time that I took it. I began my work in the district attorney's office, where they gave us a very extensive 4 week training program to teach us all aspects of trial techniques from a prosecutor's perspective. And I go to court my first day, and I can't fit through the swinging doorways in the courtroom. They were too narrow. They were too narrow to allow me to get through in my electric wheelchair. I tried to anticipate every problem that I would face. Fitting through the swinging doors in the courtroom was not what I ever imagined would be a problem.
It's just like, it's just like mind blowing everything that. But I applaud you, because this I was. Yeah, you had to do it, the bar exam twice, didn't you?
Well, no, I took it once.
You took it once.
I was fortunate that I passed my first time, but it's over a period of a few days. One day they test everything about your knowledge of New York State law. The second day, your knowledge about federal law. And there was actually a third day that was an ethics exam. So, you have to prepare for it weeks at a time just to study all of the different aspects of law and take it. I was fortunate I passed the first time. Many people don't. I was fortunate that I did.
But didn't they also acknowledge you that you had more, your grades were like, you were higher than a lot of others who were taking the exam with you?
Well, they never actually tell you what your grade are. It's either pass or fail. But,
Yeah.
a big percentage of people fail, including a number of people from my office had failed the first time that I took it. I was very fortunate um, that I was able to pass the first time.
But then time flies, and you become district attorney. Isn't that correct?
An assistant district attorney, right?
Assist. yeah. So that is huge, Kenneth J. Kunken. That is huge. And how was it in your like? That was probably when I applauded when I was listening to the book because like, yay, you know. But it is just being and going through all this, and then you also have the triplets, and you have your beautiful wife, and you have like which I have met, like so it's just like it's true she's beautiful and all of that, but that you can show people nothing is impossible.
Hayden, I was fortunate that when I was applying for the job, excuse me, with the district attorney's office, the district attorney at the time, a person by the name of Dennis Dillon, based his hiring decision on my abilities rather than my disability.
Yeah.
Not many employers were doing that back then. I was fortunate Dennis Dillon did that for me. And by basing it on my abilities, he gave me the opportunity to show what I could do. And once given that opportunity and the proper training, I was able to go into court. And as a result, show the court personnel, the court officers, um, the other lawyers that were there, the judges, the jurors, that people with a disability can actually work and work well, and not just at an entry level position, but at a very responsible position. And I was fortunate that as a result, my work was recognized and I was promoted a number of times. And I think the more people see what somebody with a disability can do, the more attitudes will be changed by that.
So the word about Mr. Stillen,
Dylan,
yeah,
Dennis Dillon.
that is progressive. How was it for you to like? It's huge that he based his assessment on you, your brain, your prior work and everything, not how you look or how disabled you were. Like, when was it that you got the assistant district attorney position?
Well, I was hired in 1982, which was right out of law school. And so that was obviously now 43 years ago. And I was fortunate that back then you didn't see somebody with my type of disability in the courtroom or even in the courthouse. I know I'm the first assistant district attorney on Long Island who was a quadriplegic. I think I was the first quadriplegic trial attorney on Long Island. Now, there may have been others in other parts of the state or country, but I had never heard about them. This was well before the internet, well
Yeah.
before they were laptop computers. So, they put me through a lengthy set of interviews when I applied for the job. And I was fortunate that the people interviewing me recognized me for my abilities. And even though they didn't know of another quadriplegic doing what I wanted to do, they gave me the chance to show what I could do. I think it took guts on their part. And they indicated to me later it wasn't guts. I was qualified. They believed in me.
Yeah.
Thanks to that, I think other people have come to the realization that there's an awful lot everybody can do if given the proper support and opportunities to show it.
And that is all when you say 1982, like there is huge. It's just like it's like in Stone Age. Like, but yet to have the guts, it is guts, isn't it? Like it is like
It is,
genuinely, because
right?
you are placing trust into. And you mentioned in your book that you have your papers in front of you, and then you had to like, and you didn't have the equipment, so like when you got the tablets and iPads and like, then your life must have been like, you must have flown through everything in like, how was it when the technology all of a sudden just like rapidly changed and everything?
It makes such a big difference because I couldn't just go to a library and pull out a book to read it.
Yeah.
I needed somebody to do that. I couldn't take notes for myself. I had difficulty just turning pages of a book. I needed special splints to be attached to try and turn a page, which could take me a few minutes to turn one page. I was fortunate that I had developed a very good memory back then. It's not quite the same now that I'm 75 years old. And
Mm.
back then, I worked hard to improve my memory, and I relied a lot on it when I went into court to try and remember all the details of a case and what I needed to question witnesses about and how to argue a summation in front of a judge and a jury. But now things have improved greatly with the advent of computers and laptop computers in particular. So there are an awful lot of modifications that help people, including the advancements in my electric wheelchair. Um, it makes a huge difference. And having facilities be made accessible so I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
fit through the doorways of the courtroom.
And the swing doors.
Right.
But that is also like it's just. But then again, they say if you lose one sense, your ability to train the rest of the senses, they just and I was listening to you reading the book. I was just like, yes, yes, the asset of a good memory and just to wing it, as we would say, but you never winged it because you knew what you were talking about.
Right. Well, I worked hard trying to develop my memory. And I
Yeah,
remember I was listening to tapes to improve your memory. I read a book on improving your memory. Um, and what I used to do is just lie in bed and stare at the ceiling the night before, my trial or my summation and try and think of everything I wanted to say. And I'd lie awake for hours and then do my best to remember it
yeah,
and not get too nervous when I was in front of the jury to be able to recite it. And I remember before my first jury selection, I got in front of the prospective jury panel, to decide who you want to select or reject from your jury. And I didn't have any notes in front of me. I thought, oh boy, I should have written out all my questions. And at the last minute, I was able to scribble a little bit with a pen, just the one word, confidence. I wrote the word confidence on my pad.
yeah.
And every so often I would look down, see the word confidence, and just have this huge smile on my face because I was thinking how silly that was to remind me to stay confident. And it actually got me through.
Yeah. There are so many. I think you have you have to write a second book because you have so much to say. Because
Thank
now the time is getting away from us. But Rab Bessie, he says, resolve is a mindset not everyone have. You have loads of it, sir. Were you as dedicated when you played football or like before the accident? Were you as dedicated or were you just a teenager who was like, hey,
No, I was a dedicated athlete. See, I'm
uh,
not very tall. I'm not very big. I'm just under 5'8". So I was usually smaller than the people I was playing with and against. So I had to work extra hard to push myself to be able to compete. And, once I had my uniform on in football, I was ready to, bump heads and,
yeah, just
reach
kill them
whatever
all. Just
was
like,
in my way. Right?
yes.
Once I had that, I felt there was nobody that could stop me.
Yeah.
Um, and I found sports was one of the ways I could deal with stress in my life. Sometimes, whether it be in schooling or other things that were taking place around you, the stress would mount up. And I found the best way of relieving that stress was to go out on the athletic field, and it helped a lot. And now these days, in fact, that's one of the issues that I face not being able to do that is how to relieve stress.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot to be able to, spend some time just out, in the yard with grass or water around you and just relax with nature. But actually, my best stress relievers are being with my wife and boys and just looking at them and spending time with them. It helps enormously.
And I just want to, because David Pushkin, he has also like, he is agreeing about the reasonable adjustments are essential to foster an inclusive workplace. Still a lot of work and collaboration to be undertaken. Like I think that sometimes we, government or workplaces, they talk a lot, but they don't deliver a lot.
Right. Well, I was very fortunate that the
Yeah,
facility I worked at, the Viscardi Center, is dedicated to helping people with disabilities not only secure the proper education and training, but to secure the proper employment. And I was very honored when they asked me to serve on their board of directors, which I'm so proud to be a part of now. And I might add that my family has been so supportive of me every step of the way that my cousin Roy Davis became so involved. He's actually chairman of our board of directors at the Viscardi Center. Um, and they make an enormous difference in people's lives.
yeah.
And thanks to them, a lot more employers are seeing the benefits of employing people with disabilities.
Before we round up, because the most, like, where the part where I maybe laughed the most, that was when you fell in love. And your thoughts about, oh my lord, Anna comes from Poland and you have to meet her mother. And you're like, it was just like, what the hell, man? Just like, she loves you. Don't, like, just marry her.
Oh
How,
my
like,
God.
give us a little bit, because your thought, I found them hilarious in some, because you are so nice. Like, what's not there to love?
Well, thank you. But, after my injury, I kind of tried to put out of my mind the thought that I would ever have, a romantic situation with a wonderful woman. And fortunately, one of my aunts by the name of Betty Weaver encouraged me not to feel that way. She kept telling me you've got a lot to offer and you shouldn't rule that out. And
Yeah,
it took a while for me to meet that perfect woman. And I finally did. Her name is Anna. But there were so many differences between Anna and I. For one, Anna's 19 years younger than I am. Anna was born and raised in Poland. Well, I've spent almost my entire life here on Long Island in New York. Anna is Catholic, and I am Jewish. Anna's over 6 feet tall, and I'm just under 5'8". And Anna's in exceptional physical condition, and here I'm almost totally paralyzed. And yet, Hayden, I have to say, it just seemed like a match made in heaven.
yeah, what, like yin and yang? What the?
Right? There was just a certain magic, a certain chemistry between us. You just can't put in words. And I was so fortunate to meet Anna. Um, and I might add, it was actually Anna that proposed to me. She actually popped the question, and
Well,
I,
you
I
had to.
am
Yeah,
so happy. Mm.
we guys, we tend to miss the signs. Like, we are so dumb that we sometimes, it just has to, like, you idiot, I want to marry you. But you went to Poland.
Yes. Yeah, I visited Poland once when her brother was getting married, and it was a wonderful trip, but, very difficult to get around there in a wheelchair back then.
Yeah,
I mean, hopefully they've improved it, but this was many years ago. And being lifted in and out of, my wheelchair to get into a car or to get into the plane, and they damaged the wheelchair. And, and some of the times that I've flown, the wheelchair gets damaged in the plane. I mean, there's so many issues and challenges with going anywhere. But I might add, I don't know, I've actually done a lot of traveling. For our honeymoon, we drove across the United States and back, where we put on more than 9,300 miles on our van. We recently took a trip out to Montana, which is way out in the western part of the United States, where we did over 7,000 miles. And we've gone up and down the East Coast, up to Maine and down to Florida in the United States. So we've actually done a lot of traveling. And we try and do everything that any other couple or family would do. And now that we have 3 kids, it's the greatest thing in the world, Hayden.
but when you met, like, you made your own thoughts about, like, who am I to get married, and like what will her parents say, and so okay, we all go through it. But when you then met them, like were they just like, uh-huh, hi?
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, they don't speak English. And my Polish, even though I tried to learn it, was severely limited. So I needed either Anna or somebody else, a brother, to help translate for me when I was meeting her parents and spending time with them. And, uh, in my mind, I knew, it can't be easy for them to think that their daughter would be living 3,000 miles away from them and that she would marry somebody with my physical limitations. But they were, and with a different religion than them, but they were very supportive. They were very unique that way and have been very loving and very helpful in my relationship with their daughter. And I can't thank them or appreciate that enough. In fact, they only wanted to help in any way that they could. Again, family, friends, community make all the difference.
And love does not know any boundaries. Just like we do what we have to do.
Right.
Can I like now underneath, like I am telling people to find you on social media because oh my, like when we met, I was just like, holy crap, I will just say it. Uh, you are an inspiration. You are like, ah, I will never complain. Well, I will complain, but what you have gone through, people have to read your book. It's awesome. It's You are a fantastic human being. I'm
Thank
so proud to have this chance and opportunity to talk to you and have Anna in the background. Uh, Thank you. I can't thank you enough because this is just an hour. Like it, and
you.
I know that physically it can be hard for you, maybe.
Well, I thank you for giving me this opportunity, Hayden, because I appreciate being able to share my story with
Yeah,
you and other people around the world so that hopefully someday it'll make it easier for other individuals who have disabilities or are facing challenges or adversity in their life. And hopefully this will help change people's attitudes of
yeah.
how you can help and what you can do no matter what challenges you face.
And how you perceive things. People are not like,
Hmm.
even though you are in a wheelchair, it can't be that there's nothing wrong with your brain. You're not blind or whatever. But go out, buy his book. I Dream of Things That Never Were. And kudos to your brother and Anna and everybody. And just, I love this conversation. You are so inspiring and just
Thank
thank
you.
you. And before we sign off, I have to mention that next week I will be talking to Gary Rich, the former CEO of WD-40. We will be talking about his book and stuff. And his book is called Any Dumbass Can Do It. And the topic is Any Dumbass Can Do It, the unsexy truth about great leadership. So that will be on Thursday, the 4th of September. And Kenneth, my motto is be curious, be interested, be inspired.
I like that motto.
And
Well said.
you are just a awesome human being, and like thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.